actually preaching not living with hate, overcoming divisions among races. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about this morning, Shirley's non-edited message. Great to see you.
Good to see you.
Well, your life has changed in 24 hours.
It certainly has.
I mean, but it's going to end up being a good thing, wouldn't you say?
I think so. You know, when we look at all what's happened in the last 24 hours, the truth is out there, and people are beginning to see just what happened, how they were manipulated into thinking one thing when it was really something else. I think it will make us all conscious of how quick we come to judge.
Well, let's do this right, okay? Your speech. It was actually a story about redemption.
Yes.
Decades ago, you did have these racist feelings.
Yes.
But you had a revelation, and you wanted to tell members of the NAACP about that revelation. Let me ask you, why did you feel you needed to tell those members this story?
Well, I try to use my life because that's what you know, when you look at where I've come from, you know, it's not just telling them this is what you need to do. It's really showing them where I've come to get to a place where I don't need to look at the color of a person's skin to determine whether or not I can help them or will help them.
And, you know, that's bold to be able to say, this is how I did feel, and this is what I did when I felt that way, but hold on, I did change. You talk so much about your past. Let's go back, once again, a few decades, okay? And your father, allegedly killed by racist farmers. That farmer never indicted, we should point out. But that hate crime triggered a huge movement in Baker County.
Yes, it did.
Tell me about the murder of your father and how that impacted you and your thought process.
You know, that was a time in my life, just like these last 2 days, when it just seemed so unreal to have our father there. You know, my mother was not much older than I am. She was about 16 years older. You know, we said he had the 6 girls, so there were 5 daughters and our mother during his lifetime. And he was just a perfect father, so compassionate, so much there for his girls. To have his life taken away from us was so tragic at the time. And I'm the oldest of their 6. You know, my father always wanted a son. They kept having all these girls. So there were 5 of us. They stopped. And then during my senior year of high school, he convinced my mother just one more time for his son. And I found she kept getting sick, and my best friend told me one day at school, she said, how is your mama? I said, she's not getting any better. She said, girl, your mother's pregnant. Your daddy was at the store yesterday giving out cigars. He told everyone this was his son, and in fact it was, but he didn't live to see him. The son was, my father was murdered 2 months before my brother was born. My brother was actually born on the day I graduated from high school. And then during that month, we started with the help of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, being led by the person who later became my husband, Shirley Sherrod. We started the Baker County movement. And Baker County had a particularly bad sheriff during those years.
Not surprising.
Yeah, they called him the Gator, and he liked being called the Gator. We had to actually face the Gator during the summer of 1965. There was Bloody Saturday. People don't hear about that, but there was Bloody Saturday in Baker County, where when the march went to the courthouse, there were all of these white men with chains and axe handles, and the person who murdered my daddy was one of them, you know, beating the people who were there to march. And there were many, many times when we had some very, very scary times as we worked to bring change in Baker County during the summer. And then in September of that year, I went away. I didn't go far. My intent was to go to the north to college. But after what happened, I didn't know whether I would get to go to college at all, but ended up going to Fort Valley. And calling home in September, found that a group of white men, the Klan, that included the sheriff, were burning a cross in front of our home. You know, in the house with my mother, my 4 sisters and my little baby brother.
And can I ask you, was it the murder of your father? Was it the cross burning? Was it the Klan's members that you saw walking through the town with those chains? Is that what created that hatred? Is that what led to that moment you talked about in that speech?
That was all part of it, and some things that happened even before. I can remember being in high school, and back in those days, they had what they call a visiting teacher. You know, I was in a segregated school there in Baker County, and I can see it just like it was yesterday. The visiting teacher, who was white, coming in and taking over the classroom from the teacher and putting words up on the board and making us pronounce them until we pronounced them like she did, as if we were not being taught, and as if we couldn't talk unless we talked the way she did. I can think of many, many other incidents.
So it's interesting, listening to this background, listening to what happened to your family, I could understand, I think anyone could understand where that just the frustration, the hatred would build. Yet, you ended up working for the same organization that at that time had the same racist views. Black farmers were being treated so unfairly, totally being thrown under the bus. But your whole attitude changed about white people, and even this organization. You ended up working for this organization. I mean, that's so ironic. How did that happen? How did that turn around?
Well, when you look at the fact that I spent years helping farmers and others try to access programs through the very agency I ended up working for, and having to manage some of the very people who actually did some of those acts, in early years. But I felt that I worked on the issues from where I was outside of the agency, and I felt being in the agency, this gave me a chance to try to bring some of the changes I felt needed to happen from that level. I needed to make sure the staff and everyone else knew that this was an agency where everyone had equal access. I don't think most people don't even know what rural development in Georgia does. It's one agency that could build a whole city, because we deal with all, hospitals, homes, just getting people into decent and affordable homes. So much can happen from that agency with the right person being at the head of it. And I felt, because of what I've been through, I was a person who was right for the time.
That could make that difference. Now, you mentioned that you ended up managing people that had treated you and your family unfairly years back, which leads me to the question, the farmer, Cal Hall, who was accused of killing your father. Did you ever end up talking to him, his family, having interaction? Did you ever find peace with that family?
No, we didn't. Not at all. I was told, as I remember, he died of cancer some years later, and I think when he was near his deathbed, I think he wanted to try to talk to my mother's brother or someone. I don't think that ever happened.
I'm just having visions of Emmett Till and what that family went through. And so your father, Josie, because I want to bring it back to that. He would be so proud of
Yes,
you.
he would. Yes.
What do you, I'm sure that everything that you've been through and how you got to this point is so much in his honor, and his death really breathed new life into you, and now look at how this has all come. Do you even think that if it got to this point that you'd even be able to make the difference that you're making now? I mean, you're on your way. You have a national audience now to tell your message.
Yes.
And to talk about his life and what happened in your past.
And this is something I've always, to talk about his life and what happened to him, was one of my goals from way back when I made the decision.
I love the picture that we have of him as well. Scott, here, we've probably been looking at, there it is right there. I love this picture. You can just tell the love in his face. But continue. You've been wanting to
Brown video.
Wanting to write a book.
Yes. Because he
K.L. Brown
He's a
videos.
person who looked out for the entire community. There are individuals who would tell